Hey everyone, welcome to Science Buffs, the ultimate podcast for STEM enthusiasts. I'm Abby,
And I'm Sam.
and welcome to the podcast, everyone. Sam, how are you doing? What's going on?
I'm doing good. Not a lot is new. I
Big life
am
updates.
kind of panicking about packing for Japan, but because I haven't started yet and I leave in 2 weeks, like a week and a half.
2 weeks. You don't have to start packing in for 2 weeks away.
I know, but everyone keeps asking me, so I feel pressured, like my mom.
What?
And then some of my coworkers are like, "Did you start packing it?" And I was like, "Nope, I have not."
That's that I've never started packing for anything 2 weeks in advance.
I know. Speaking
I
of
feel like I
which,
wear all the clothes that I'm going to pack. There's not a lot of just extra clothes that I'm just like, I
yeah,
don't need
that's
this for 2 weeks that I want to wear in a foreign country when I'm taking all my pictures.
that's how you are. You're very minimalist, and I feel like generally, and you like I remember in college, like your room would always have like just the minimum, like what you needed.
That's
I
true.
take like way too much. I'm like, I think I have like four pairs of shoes I want to take. It's just really bad.
Yeah, I that makes sense. But I don't know. I don't I think you're okay. You don't have to start panicking about packing it.
I know. Speaking of which, you leave to go to Hawaii
Yeah,
on
in three
Thanksgiving.
days.
Have you
Yeah,
packed?
and no. So, and I have to pack like a baby, all of the baby stuff.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about
So
that. That's a whole
yeah,
nother
and
layer.
there's kind of like a lot to think about because we've only gone on trips that are short weekend trips. So that's like one thing where it's like a couple days.
Yeah.
But now we have to plan for 10 days away, but also like in a pool. So we had to get him like swimsuits and all these shade,
Oh my
blow up
goodness.
contraptions and stuff. And so, I don't know. I'm like researching, can you put sunscreen on like a 6 month old? All this stuff.
Do
Swim
you have to buy
diapers.
special sunscreen?
I think at 6 months you can like put a little bit of sunscreen on them. So I think we're okay. But yeah, I got like a few things that we I think can use. And then yeah, like I have to buy a bathing suit tomorrow. I'm just really unprepared. Like I think I'm gonna go to the mall and purchase my swimsuit tomorrow, very last minute. So
It makes me feel a little bit better about my packing
yeah, I
situation.
bet it does.
You'll be okay though. Like you're gonna be on the beach
Yeah,
and it won't
it'll be
matter.
good. Like I figure we're going to like a populated area that is, you know, like basically a resort kind of. So I can just there's going to be stuff there. If we forget anything,
Yeah.
that's what I'm telling myself, you know, we can buy stuff there. But I've curated a list over the last few trips that we've taken of all the basics for, the baby and for myself. And
Yeah.
I haven't forgotten anything major the last two trips we've taken with him, so I think we'll be okay.
That's good. Yeah, it'll
Yeah.
all
You're
work
gonna have
out.
to you're gonna have to pack some or like leave some extra room for things to take back from Japan.
I know. Everyone told me to bring like a separate duffel bag.
Yeah, you should just like pack the one duffel bag in your in
Yeah.
your luggage.
Yeah, everyone's Christmas presents are coming from Japan, so I need
Oh
lots of
yeah,
room.
a new duffel bag or an extra duffel bag is in order then.
Yeah. I'm gonna take all
Did
the
you do
matcha that
anything?
they sell.
What?
I'm gonna buy all the matcha that they sell.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Did you do anything else fun this weekend? Are you done with
I
lessons in chemistry? Not to put you on blast.
I am not. I know. I'm usually a
Well, we took
very
a bit of a
fast reader.
pause.
I'm usually a very fast reader. I read like the entire A Court of Thorns and Roses series in like 2 months. But I am really struggling with lessons in chemistry. People really like that book and it
I'm
is
surprised you don't like it,
good.
although I guess
It's a
I don't
little
know. I guess
slow.
maybe yeah. I guess you like the action more like high
Yeah,
paced
that's
books.
true.
I loved lessons in chemistry. Like I flew on it after a certain
Yeah,
amount of time. I think I like
I
the
need
more
to finish
slow
it.
paced books.
Yeah, I need to finish it. My mom read it really quickly. She really liked that book as well. But
Have
I'll
you
finish
read
it.
Iron Flame yet?
I have not. I'm specifically saving that for my 12-hour flight to Japan.
Yeah, because I keep hearing reviews online and they're like, it's huge. And people keep saying like they'll read for hours and they'll be at like, like 4% more in the book. And
Yeah.
so
It
I'm
is
curious
like
your
I got
thoughts.
it. I pre-ordered it and it was a big deal because I got sprayed edges, like a big
I
thing. They're all
saw on
black.
the story.
Yeah, so I'm like super excited to pack that and take it with me. But I know I have been completely avoiding any spoilers on Instagram. If you are a person that feels the need to spoil a new book on Instagram, I'm not happy with you. I just
Do
scroll
they don't
past.
say spoiler alert?
Not always.
See,
So
that's just wrong.
I just scroll right past.
That's good.
So
That's
yeah.
good.
So nobody say anything.
Okay. Yeah. Everyone out there, stop giving spoilers.
I
That's
know.
like you saw the spoiler for Suits, which I was
I
upset by.
did. On Instagram, I was just scrolling and I saw the very
Season
like
8, end
important
of season
scene,
8. If you know, you know. Anyway,
which I guess I'm kind of happy I know about because I'm at a point in Suits where
it's
I
tough
just don't know
going.
if I would keep going if I didn't know
I
that this goodness was coming.
really quick for the listener, Sam texted me and it was like, I don't think I can push through. I'm in season 7. And I was like, get through it. You got it. Like you have to at least get to the end of season 8. And like at that point, you might as well just go through to season 9. And she's like, what? I thought there were only 7 seasons.
I know I was like, I'm almost done. And then I determined I was not.
Well, good luck. It'll be worth it. It's fine. It wraps up well. So,
Okay, good.
anyway, are you ready to get into the topic?
I am. I'm very excited.
Okay, great. So, I'm teaching Sam this week, and here are your clues. First clue is it involves biomedical engineering.
Ooh,
Any guesses initially?
biomedical engineering. Okay, I think I need more.
Okay, we have briefly talked about it on the podcast before, very briefly.
Does it have to do with heart surgery?
No, but it was like
Does
in the same conversation as that.
Oh man. I think I have a terrible memory.
That's okay. Okay, you're telling me I was editing the previous episodes, and every time you quizzed me on something that I got a degree in, I got it wrong. And my trivia was atrocious, so don't feel bad.
Okay, we've talked about it before. Hearing aids?
Yes, pretty much. Cochlear implants and hearing aids.
Oh,
So we're gonna like
interesting.
talk about mostly cochlear implants, but I'll also touch on the difference between hearing aids and cochlear implants and kind of when people use them.
That's awesome. Do you what's the third clue?
The third clue is going to be it's controversial within the community that it's meant for. And we're going to touch on this also, but
Really?
there's like a big debate within the deaf community. And, we'll talk about it, but yeah, it's controversial within the deaf community.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought of
Yeah,
that.
I know. I was reading articles and I was fascinated. So we're going to touch on it a little bit.
Cool. I'm excited about this one.
Okay. So what do you know about cochlear implants specifically?
I don't know a lot about them. I have a family friend that has hearing aids. Um,
Okay.
and she just got a hearing dog, and it's super
Oh,
exciting for her. She's waited like 10 years to get one.
what
Um,
does that entail? How,
she had to be on a wait list for about like 8 years. And then
whoa.
finally they have like a dog that the way that I understand it, they finally had a dog that matched with her, like that they
Okay.
felt would be a good match. And then she had to go to training and everything.
So the
Um,
dog just helps to like be aware of the environment and stuff and
yeah,
help okay. Help like alert her to anything that's happening.
exactly. But yeah, I
Wow.
don't know a ton about it.
I love working dogs so much. As a side
Me
note, they're so
too.
cute.
It takes everything in me. Like you're not supposed to go
I
approach them. You're really
know.
not supposed to acknowledge them, but like I just inside,
I
my
always
heart
just
is
like
so happy.
stand kind of far away and just like look at them like, oh, so cute.
It's like if you saw Taylor Swift on the street.
You're just like, ah.
It's a celebrity.
Oh my gosh. Like, you do your job, buddy. You go.
You go, little guy.
Okay, well that's good. So yeah, we'll talk again about both. I did nothing on the hearing dogs though, so I'm glad you brought that up. We'll have to post some stories about some hearing dogs.
Yeah.
Um,
So basically,
okay,
I know
cool.
nothing.
That is okay. So basically, let's go over just in general what a cochlear implant is. So it's an electronic device that improves hearing, which you can kind of guess that part at least is similar to a hearing aid. It can be an option for people who have severe hearing loss from inner ear damage. So if your cochlea gets damaged, that is what the cochlear implant helps. So the inner ear is damaged, and if your inner ear gets damaged, you're a good candidate for a cochlear implant. And it's mostly for people who have tried hearing aids or their hearing loss has progressed past the point where hearing aids are useful for them anymore. So a lot of times also, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, is sometimes someone will have like one cochlear implant and one hearing aid and kind of transition, instead of both ears at once, because it can be very overwhelming. They'll have both hearing aids and then transition one ear to cochlear implant and one ear later. So unlike hearing aids, which just amplify sound, the cochlear implant bypasses damaged portions of the ear to deliver sound signals to the auditory nerve. So again, a hearing aid will just take the sound signal and just make it louder. So if you have a certain level of hearing loss, that will help and just amplify the sound. But this actually will bypass your whole inner ear and basically stimulate your nerve, and that will be processed by your brain as a sound. So when it's first turned on, it can sound very mechanical, and there's like a whole process for turning it on, which we'll talk about, but it's not just as simple as kind of like making a sound louder. It's stimulating a nerve in your brain.
That's so cool.
It's crazy technology. It's really cool.
How old are
So,
they? Like, how long have they been around for? Do you know?
I'll have to look. It's in one of these articles that I pulled up, I think. So, save that question.
I
we'll,
will.
we'll look it up, or we can do a quick Google. But okay, cochlear implants are a sound processor that fits behind the ear. So like when you see a little kid with it, a lot of times they like wear a headband to keep it in place, but other times it will just fit just kind of right over your hair. It's like a magnet, basically, for the different parts. But the processor captures the sound signals and sends them to a receiver, which is implanted under the skin behind the ear. So there's a surgical procedure to implant it. The receiver sends the signals to electrodes implanted in the snail-shaped inner ear, which is called the cochlea. So that's the gist of what it is. The signals, when they are received by the receiver, they stimulate the auditory nerve, which then directs the signals to the brain, and then the brain interprets those as sounds. So that's kind of what we went over. And this basically says it takes time and training to interpret the signals and have like an improvement in speech. So a lot of people get cochlear implants because obviously they can't hear, so it's harder to learn speech, especially for little kids who are in that very narrow window of learning language, and that really helps with brain development. It takes about 3 to 6 months of use usually for most people to make considerable gains in speech. So your brain starts to adapt to the kind of mechanical sounds, you start getting used to it, and um, and then speech can improve.
So does it sound like we hear sound, or does it like
From what I
hearing people
understand,
hear
it
sound?
does not sound like what we sound, what we would hear. So I think there were, some like testimonials basically of people who had their hearing and then it got damaged, and then they had a cochlear implant and it doesn't sound the same, but you can just interpret it, and understand speech and stuff and understand like environmental noises, but it sounds a little bit different.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So,
It's crazy how your brain learns how to process that information.
I know. And it kind of reminds me of those studies where like, well, I heard about this girl who, when she was really young, she had a problem with like half of her brain, her whole right side, I think, I think it was epilepsy. And she actually had a whole half of her brain fully removed. And so
Oh
she,
my
like half of her body
goodness.
was paralyzed. Um, but then, your brain is so elastic as a kid that she actually regained like full movement of her body because her other side adapted to, only having one side of her brain in this very narrow window. And so, yeah, it's crazy that your brain can adapt to these different inputs.
That's
And so that's
wild.
why people try to do, if they want to get a cochlear implant, like parents will um, elect to have their young kids have it installed because that's where they'll learn the most and they can, recover most of their speech. But that's also part of the reason why it's controversial because a lot of kids, some people think that it should be a choice that you make once you're an adult, basically. But we'll get into that. So, like I mentioned, cochlear implants can be placed in one ear or both ears. Adults will often have one cochlear implant and one hearing aid at first, and then they can transition. So, any adult, like an adult of any age, or kids as young as 6 to 12 months, can get a cochlear implant.
Wow, 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, which is a lot younger than I thought before I researched, which so they can do it very, very early. Um, and again, it helps with environmental sounds, noisy environments. A lot of like where sounds are coming from is what people with inner ear damage aren't able to figure out. So even if they can hear, it's hard to tell where it's coming from. So this helps with that. And then also um, tinnitus, I think it's called,
Tinnitus.
is tinnitus. Yes. Oh yeah, two N's.
Yeah,
Tinnitus.
tinnitus.
Yeah, so that is the ringing or buzzing sound in your ear for a prolonged amount of time. This also helps with that. And that's very common in like damaged inner ears.
Interesting.
Okay, so the surgery is very safe. There's a couple side effects to the surgery. There could be, in very rare cases, loss of residual hearing, which it says that the implantation of the device can cause a loss of remaining unclear natural hearing. So if you have like a little bit left, that might go away because there's like stronger, um, I want to say stronger sounds, but it's like your auditory nerve is being stimulated differently, basically. Meningitis is a very rare complication. And then failure of the device. If the device fails for some reason, you have to like go into a whole other surgery. You can't just switch it out. So it is kind of
Interesting.
high stakes if it fails.
And so meningitis is a like side effect or risk of getting the
Yeah, because
surgery?
they're like in your spinal cord, basically.
Interesting. Is
It
that
says,
common?
no, it says it's very rare. Meningitis can occur after cochlear implant surgery. Vaccinations to reduce the risk of meningitis are generally given to adults and children before implantation. It's less frequent than 1 in 1,000. So,
Wow.
not a huge risk for that.
Is it? And it's probably a pretty invasive surgery, I'm assuming, because it's,
Yeah, we go a little. It doesn't actually seem like a huge incision or anything, but it doesn't seem fun either. Like they're
yeah.
drilling a part of the skull, so that's not um great, but it's not like a huge scar or anything from what I understand.
Wow.
So basically, preparing for the surgery, you'll get like an MRI or a CT image of the skull and the inner ear to just make sure everything's good. They'll like check all your ear anatomy and things like that. It says the internal cochlear implant has an external unit that attaches to the side of the head and it fits behind the ear. So they just want to make sure that you're good with that. They also, for kids, a lot of times do like a psychological evaluation, make sure that they, have the support system and the willingness to like want to go through the surgery. And because if a kid doesn't want to wear a cochlear implant, like they can just rip it off all the time and you're never going to get anywhere. So there's a lot of evaluations that go on to just make sure you're like mentally prepared for the procedure as well as physically prepared. So okay, so the procedure is done by making a small incision behind the ear, and then they form a small hole in the portion of the skull bone, which is called the mastoid. And that's where they put the internal device. It says the surgeon will then create a small opening in the cochlea in order to thread the electrode of the internal device. And then the skin is stitched closed so that the internal device is fully under your skin. So it's very delicate.
Is
attaching these
this
like electrodes to the nerves.
is this surgery done by a human surgeon or is it done by
Yes.
robotics?
From what I can tell, it's done by a human.
Wow.
Very
That has to
high
be a
pressure.
high pressure, high skilled job.
Ugh, yeah. You don't want to get that wrong for sure. I think just being a surgeon in general, it would be just so crazy. But
Yeah.
yeah, they do it. So basically the side effects are just, pressure or discomfort over the ear, obviously, because you just had a procedure on it. And some people feel like dizzy or nauseous because your inner ear also controls like your balance. So it can be kind of disorienting when you've had something um, messed with in there. And then to activate, which you've probably seen some activation videos of cochlear implants where people can like, um, hear for the first time. Part of the controversy that we'll go into also is that some of those are misleading because it takes a long time to kind of rehabilitate after this surgery. And a lot of these practice sessions where their hearing is like turned on. But basically, they adjust the sound processor to fit your ear. They check the components to make sure they're all working properly. And then they start turning on the device and testing what you hear. So a lot of times it's again very like metallic-y, can't really make out a lot of actual sounds. And a lot of times it's very overwhelming for people from what I've read, where, especially if you've had like no hearing your whole life and then you suddenly get this crazy influx of sounds, even like just silence, even if the room is quiet, there's still kind of background noise that is overwhelming to people.
Yeah, I
Um,
can only imagine.
yeah, so at first you kind of have to turn it on, it sounds like, for just short periods of time, and then you go into like an office and they turn it on and test what you can hear and kind of adjust the levels as needed. So it is a really big process to turn it on. I used to, before I researched, I kind of used to just think it was like, okay, you turn it on, you can like hear normally,
Yeah,
but
those
it's
videos
really a,
must be
a
misleading
big.
then. Because you see these
Yeah, and I
videos where it's
think it
like,
might be like when they finally get those levels correct and then they're turning it on and then there are family members with them so they can hear them better. I mean, and some people it sounds like they have really good experiences. It's not like as overwhelming. Maybe if you do have kind of residual hearing before the implant, it's easier. It's an easier transition. But for some people, it's obviously very overwhelming. So just good to note. And then there's also a lot of speech rehabilitation to learn what different sounds are. So even if you are hearing a sound that maybe sounds kind of normal, a lot of people won't know what that sound is. Like if you hit a table, they could hear that sound, but have never heard what it sounds like to hit a table. So it's a lot of processing what sounds you're actually hearing and
yeah.
recognizing those. Um, Okay, so that's what a cochlear implant is. I won't go into too much detail. I found an article that I'll post on stories about the difference between hearing aids and cochlear implants, but I think we've gone over it enough with, this describes like the parts of the hearing aid and stuff versus cochlear implant. But I think we kind of went over that with a hearing aid just amplifying the sound. So I have some quick stats about hearing and hearing loss in the US. So about two to three out of every 1,000 children in the United States are born with some detectable level of hearing loss in one or both of their ears, which is higher than I thought.
So 2 to 3 out of 1,000.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
that might be a little higher than I
I'm not
thought.
sure if I know anyone with hearing loss
I
who's
always wondered
born with it.
when you were younger, did they make you get your hearing tested every year in elementary
Yeah, at
school?
school.
And
Oh,
I
it made me
thought, I
so
think
nervous.
it made me nervous. And I think it made me think that the percentage of people that struggled with hearing loss was a lot higher. So I actually
Right.
think that's lower than I guess what I would have thought.
Okay. I can
But
see that.
yeah,
Yeah, because they did do the test like every every single year, I think.
yeah, I think
And I
it
would
was every
always
single
feel
year.
like I was hearing more, like I was like, "Oh, am I going to miss the?"
Yeah,
It's
when you had to
like,
raise your hand.
yeah, you had to raise your hand, and I was like really nervous that was not going to raise it in time and they were going to think I had hearing loss. So, but yeah, it's 2 out of 3 out of 1,000. So, and actually, they came in when we were at the hospital and tested my son's hearing, and they didn't have to like play any noise for him. They
How do
like
they
put
do
these
that?
monitors up to his head. I didn't really ask a lot of questions. They just kind of took him over into the corner of our room and tested his hearing. But I was like, oh, is it going to be, loud or anything? Like I didn't hear a single sound. It was like they hooked him up to monitors, and I think they like stimulated it or something and made sure he responded, or like that his brain waves responded.
Interesting.
I thought it would be
Huh.
like, hey, and if he turned his head or something, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, we think he can hear.
The,
But it was
like snapping
much
or
more high
something.
tech than that. Yeah.
That's really
Um,
cool. We'll have to look up
yeah,
what they do. Like we'll have to look that up and
yeah,
post about it.
for sure, for sure. Okay, more than 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents, which is another interesting stat that I did
90%.
not know. Hmm.
So does that mean 90% of the time it's not genetic? Is that kind of what we're saying?
Well, or it's
Unless
like
it
a
comes from somebody
recessive,
else in the family. Yeah.
or they could, yeah, I guess, I mean, for like cochlear implants, it's mostly inner ear damage. So, like some sort of head trauma
Oh,
or ear
right.
trauma or something. But there is also, hearing loss that's more genetic. Also, like, actually, I did know someone who had hearing loss, I think, because in my old neighborhood when we would trick or treat, there was a family on Halloween where the two parents were deaf, but they had all hearing children,
Interesting.
which would be kind of tough. But I just remember because their doorbell was like a light through the whole house instead of sound.
That
So
totally makes sense.
yeah, definitely some interesting like adaptations for hearing impaired people. Let's see. Okay, there was a few other ones here. Uh, okay, last one. As of December 2019, approximately 736,900, so almost 737,000 cochlear implants have been implanted worldwide. The number in the US is pretty much just shy of 200,000. So about 118,000 devices have been implanted in adults and 65,000 are in children.
See, that number is lower than I would think, but
Really?
I I don't know. It seems low. But
I thought it was low, but then like the actual what a cochlear implant fixes seems so specific that I guess that number makes sense to me, that it's
I was
like
just thinking that.
mostly damage. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think they really work for a lot of people. And then you have to qualify for it, um,
You have to
and
be
it has to
past
work.
like a
So,
certain threshold of hearing loss, right?
right. Yep.
Yeah.
And it has to be like the specific problem where your inner ear is damaged. So, so yeah, it's not a ton of people, but 200,000 in the US, pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the controversial part a little bit because there's multiple facets of the whole thing that I feel like I just as I was researching it came up so many times that I was like, okay, I have to mention this. Obviously, we're like not part of the deaf community, so people might have different thoughts about this, but I'll just show both sides of why it's controversial. And I will also obviously link the article in our podcast notes so anyone can go read some more. But basically, within the deaf community, there's a couple different controversies. So first of all, the videos that we were mentioning, some people say it like sensationalizes the cochlear implant, or kind of misconstrues it as like this miracle cure for deafness that everyone should want. And it like really kind of downplays how much, I guess, trauma and how much like rehabilitation it takes, and how kind of it's a big deal for people to have to like go through all of this, and people just see the one moment where it's turned on and it's like working amazing and everyone's crying. And for a lot of people, like we mentioned, it's just not like that. So people think that everyone with a cochlear implant kind of has this same amazing reaction.
That's interesting. I can
um
definitely say that I like because my ignorance, I didn't know a lot about this or anything about this previously. I probably was one of the people that believed that it just
right, but
happened
then
immediately.
right. But then, the flip side of that is like for people who it is a really good experience, they want to show that it was a good experience. And
Right.
so even within the deaf community, like these videos, there's, different sides to that. There's like a lot of downvotes on some of those from members of the deaf community being like, well, mine didn't go this way. But the person in the video, maybe it's important to show that theirs is positive so that people aren't scared of installing one if they would like to.
Right.
The other big one, which was fascinating to me, was that cochlear implants, a certain subset of the deaf community, are against cochlear implants because they feel it's eradicating the deaf community. So there's like, deaf schools and deaf institutions and, certain spaces for deaf people. And when you have a cochlear implant, especially when parents are choosing to have a cochlear implant installed for their child, they are then basically essentially part of the hearing world. And so they kind of lose their connection with the deaf community, is how this certain subset feels. Now, the other side thinks that, you should be able to still be within the deaf community, even if you choose to have cochlear implants. And if you get rejected by the deaf community, if you choose to have cochlear implants, then that's kind of like more like a cult instead of a community. So there's been multiple criticisms online. There's also the discussion about whether children should be given cochlear implants when they're under 18 because it is an invasive medical procedure. So should they have the option to choose? But if you wait till you're 18, you lose out on a lot of brain development and speech recognition and stuff like that. So it could kind of set them back with language and learning. So again, I will link the articles about this, but it was just interesting because, on any deaf video, basically, if you go through the comments, a lot of the negative comments are coming from the deaf community, and a lot of the positive comments are coming from the deaf community because
Interesting.
it's just very
Just
controversial.
divided.
Yeah, just to be like a little bit more specific, I found a couple quotes from this article that I will read, but there are a lot of deaf culturalists, they're called, who kind of study deaf culture. And some, like, again, this is like a subset of all of the deaf community, but some find the assumption that they need to be fixed or cured insulting. And they believe that the cochlear implant will basically destroy their culture. So, number of ASL speakers will go down, deaf institutions, and just deaf culture as a whole, which we kind of talked about. But then on the opposite side, there was a quote by a recipient of a cochlear implant who said that the cochlear implant actually enhances. He says, "I feel the implant enhances my pride. I am proud to be overcoming what was considered to be a severe handicap. Proud to be part of the community as a whole, not to a club of narrow-minded people." So it's kind of a jab, but that is one of the opinions, at least. And yeah, so the counter argument basically to those deaf culturalists that are anti-cochlear implant is basically that it's too tribalistic and militant, and that they kind of turn their backs on people who have received the cochlear implant. And there are people who say that once they received theirs, they felt ostracized from the deaf community because they decided to make that decision. So that's like a whole
Interesting.
debate that I didn't even know existed. So kind of interesting. And again, um, we will link the article so you can learn more because there's a lot of nuance in this article and a lot of quotes from people who have either received one or decided to not receive one based on their view on this issue. So
That's a very interesting perspective that I wouldn't
I
have
know,
thought of.
yeah. So it's kind of wild that there's like this whole debate raging in the community, and obviously, like if we're not plugged into that, we wouldn't know. But it's something I never would have thought of. So,
That's
but we
really
will link the
interesting.
resources. Yeah. So that is pretty much all for cochlear implants. Do you have any questions or
That was a
any
fantastic
more
topic.
things? Thanks.
I don't think I have any questions because, like I said, I'm not super plugged into the deaf community, but I think it's an
I
amazing technology.
Yeah.
And I'd be interested to know a little bit more about like the history of like how long it's been around and how they figured
Let
out
me just
that.
look. Let me just
I'm
look.
just curious, like how they figured, like even figured that out. That
Okay,
they would
hold
have to
on.
do something very specific to the brain to be able to kind of make it so somebody could hear again.
Yeah, I kind
That's
of went
probably a
on.
that's probably a big combination of scientists and doctors and engineers. That's why biomedical
Yeah,
engineering is so interesting.
I know. I love like biomedical stuff, but
It's merging basically all aspects of STEM into one, if you really think about it.
yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. And the figuring out how to like implant something in a human's body to like repair a full sense, that is just amazing.
In a way that they can recover
Um,
from, that it doesn't cause more damage
right.
than good.
Okay, here we go. So it says just 50 years ago, there were no effective treatments for deafness and severe hearing losses. The development of the cochlear implant changed that completely, and today most recipients of CI can converse with ease using their cell phones. So that was like a major milestone. Okay, history of cochlear implant. So Alessandro Volta, who developed the electric battery, provided the first account of electrical stimulation of the auditory system. So that was back in the early 1800s.
Wow.
He connected each pole of a battery to a metal probe and inserted one probe into one of his ear canals and the other probe into the other canal. Seems risky, to say the
Wow.
least. One of the probes had a switch to interrupt or allow the flow of current. He described his experience after closing the switch as a jolt in the head. These early
Interesting.
scientists were doing wild things to try to
They
prove
were.
their points. Like, what if I stuck two metal probes in my ears and then jolted myself?
They had like no
um,
sense of risk, I guess.
I know. He said it was like a jolt in the head, followed by a sound that resembled a kind of crackling, jerking, or bubbling, as if some dough or thick material was boiling.
So his brain was boiling.
Concerning. Yeah. Okay, then in 1855, Duchenne de Boulogne stimulated the cochlea with an alternating rather than direct current. He experienced similar sensations of buzzing, hissing, and ringing. The stimulation also elicited multiple other non-auditory sensations, such as the sensation of a metallic taste, which was probably due to the
Interesting.
stimulation of the chorda tympani nerve, they say. Okay,
Interesting.
then nothing really happened for like 80 years, but then in 1930, Weaver and Bray recorded electrical potentials in the cochlea that closely followed the waveform of the sound stimulus. They called this the Weaver and Bray effect, naturally.
That would make sense.
And it suggested the possibility to some that if the potentials could somehow be replicated, then lost or absent hearing could be restored. So that was kind of so 1930 is really when they were like, okay, maybe we could make some sort of device that would restore the hearing.
Wow.
And then it says finally in 1957, Andre DiGiorno and Charles, oh gosh, Irias, I don't know, performed the first direct electrical stimulation of the human auditory system. The patient had only the stump of the auditory nerve remaining on both sides following previous ear surgeries, and the patient was operated on again by Irias to address a recurring problem during the operation. He had, okay, sorry, there's a lot
Can't
of information about
imagine
this
I can't
surgery.
imagine having such an invasive surgery in like the 1930s.
I know, like very risky, but I guess he's probably desperate.
Yeah.
Um, the patient could discriminate different intensities, but discrimination of different frequencies is very poor. So even that was not super great. In 1961, they kind of to implant the first patients in Los Angeles. So in 1961, they like improved the implants. The first implants consisted of either a single wire with a flamed ball contact at the end, or so. Okay, so basically, they had primitive implants in 1961, and then it's just been improving since there. So they've added like,
Wow.
yeah, 70s were like a big decade for improving of the cochlear implants. So Yeah, 1976 was highly controversial, it says. So that's where like the controversy started and they started developing better cochlear implants. So again, I'll link this because lots of good technical, very technical information about what
Yeah,
the first implants included.
yeah. And I appreciate you like providing insight into the controversy around it because I had no idea. But it makes
Yeah.
sense.
And it's
Could be
also kind of
multiple perspectives.
crazy how quickly it's become a safe procedure. Like 50
Yeah,
years. And there's not like a ton of people. I mean, 200,000 in the US, I guess, is a lot, but still it's not like millions.
yeah.
And they've really gotten it down. So wild stuff.
That was a
But
fantastic topic. I really liked that.
thanks. Well, I'm glad to shine some light on it because I have driven past the Cochlear company building for so long, and I'm like, I want to work there. And all the
You should
places
do it one
here
day.
are not engineering related. I think I'd have to move to like New Zealand is where they're based out of or something.
Maybe you
It was
could
like
work
some
from
other
home.
country. Yeah, I'm like, can I remote in and just engineer an implant from here?
If it's a different country too, you'd probably have to like work in the middle of the night because of the time change.
Yeah, true. There's like multiple barriers to that one. But it would be cool somehow to get into like a medical or, implant related company. I think would be cool.
Yes. Again, I have one friend that's a biomedical engineer, and we should
Yes, and
have
we
her
gotta
on.
interview her. I'm excited to
Yes.
hear about what she does. That's like the
Yes.
dream
We'll
biomed.
ask her to come
So
on. She
perfect.
knows who she
We'll
is.
set that
So
up.
this is a test if she
Yeah.
listens to our podcast.
Yes, I know. Contact us if you're listening.
Reach
Test,
out.
test. Anyway, all right. Well, that is this week's episode. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're on. Go hit the follow or subscribe button and go leave us a 5-star review because we got to get Spotify recommending our podcast to everyone. So thank you in advance for doing that. And thank you for listening to the episode. And we will see you next week for another one. Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.